Welcome back to the So Cute Runner series, this time for September. We all know that's apple picking season, so we have some cute spool blocks with our apples of all different colors. There's so many varieties of apples, and I just love that, right? This is a continuation of this series, but let's jump into this. As you know, we write a preliminary pattern every time we design a new project at Shabby. Our sample makers take their sample yardage, the initial pattern, they go make the sample and they're proofing this pattern. When you open that kit up, be sure to identify your fabrics, right? Because we have some very specific cutting. And we like to sticker everything we're doing. We just get a little bit of sticky and we just write, you know, A and B, and we write notes all along the way. This isn't just for video. We do this upstairs in our sewing room. So grab some sizing as well. I have always found that when I want precise patchwork, if I give my fabric some nice sizing and a press with a very hot iron, things are already moving in the right direction. I also make sure I'm working with a fresh blade in the rotary cutter. If I'm already pushing too hard or it's skipping, forget that, just change the blade. So once we've gotten our fabrics out, we've sized everything, everything has been pressed and cut, we're now moving right into our construction. Let's talk about our stitch and flip corners, a very common technique you're going to be seeing not only in the September project, but really we've been seeing this kind of all along, where we have our rectangle, and that is most certainly true here. I'm just going to flip the page. We're living it right here, right? Where we have cut out our fabric, our rectangle here, and we've also cut out our squares. And there's those stickers. In fact, here's one of the stickers right here. We have A and B. It just helps us stay organized. Right away on the back of our fabric, and it's a little bit tricky. I have done this wrong several times. You might have too. Notice how when you see this from the above vantage point, it looks like that's right side up, but you know, and a lot of times that looks right side up too. So just make sure you do have the true wrong side is up. We're going to be drawing a line corner to corner, and then we'll be placing these in right side together, opposite corners. You're sewing directly on those lines, and we've done that ahead of time to look just like that, right? And we're going to press toward the cream. I like to press toward the cream, press away before I trim. There have been a few times where I somehow placed it in the corner, but by the time I got to the machine and sewed it, it was just a little cattywampus. And when I pressed it out, it kind of looked like that. And I thought, that's not good. So that's why I like to confirm it looks great before I trim the excess away. Once we're sure we like what we're seeing, you can grab for really anything that's going to give you a nice 1/4 inch here. Trim the excess away. You might be tempted to leave that little bit of extra fabric thinking it's not hurting anything. It actually is. It's creating unnecessary bulk that may make it difficult later on to have your points come together. So make sure you are trimming that excess. So that's really how we're getting the top and bottom of those spools. You're just doing that 2 times for each one of your spools. So very straightforward, and you can see we're doing that in a combination. Just a reminder with things like plaids, you know, get your line, get where you want to be, make that initial cut, and then you might need to turn that fabric around. So it's called fussy cutting, so that your plaid is nice and straight, and that for us is very important. Some people are like, they don't care. But for us, and if that's you, make sure you're just being very intentional about getting that straight line established first. Turn that fabric around, measure the distance over, and make a nice clean cut. And now your plaid will be running true, right? Not kind of veering off. For the middle of our spool, very straightforward. Again, everything here is labeled, makes sense. We have our D and our 2 C's, flipping those right side together, 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch. And this time pressing toward the pink. A reminder that arrows in our patterns are pressing instructions. Notice this did tell us to press out toward our cream, right? And we did that actually twice. And here, once we sew this together, this is saying better press toward that pink. And you already know what that reason is, and that's so that we can get some interlocking seams. That helps us hit those points. So I'm going to press that toward the pink. That way, when we sandwich this together, once I place this right side together like this and like this, we would normally have our interlocking seams. Now, this is a slightly offset because of the anklets coming in, but I can still see the way that this hits. This edge of that seam allowance pressing that direction is actually coming to the edge of that white. You can imagine if everything was pressed in the same direction, there'd be a lopsided amount of bulk. Too much bulk on one side and not enough on the other. This is why we are very intentional about the way that we press. And I didn't know that for actually a long time. And Tammy is very much the influence that helped me recognize that trying to distribute bulk evenly, have interlocking seams whenever possible, is a very important part about precise piecing. So thank you, Tammy, for helping me see it, right? Understand how important that is. Stitch with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and of course we would do the same here on the other piece. And notice we're pressing everything open. Okay, so that's how we're getting our block. If you have any challenges here with, in fact, let me just show you what I'm talking about. Sometimes seams don't really want to press open. This is why there's a clapper on set. Let me show you how to use a clapper. The first thing I've learned about using a clapper when I have a seam that's resistant to wanting to press in one way or the other or open is I get the seam nice and warm so automatically it's pliable. Think about it. If you warmed up taffy, isn't it more likely to be supple in your hands, or clay or anything like that? And that of course is a yes. So that's our first step, and then we go right over the top of the presser bar. This is the Gypsy Quilter presser bar here on the top, and then beneath we have a clapper, so it serves two purposes: to warm up the seam right over the top. Then we simply come back in over the top with our clapper, and I might go work on a different spool block right now, right? It's okay to be working on different blocks concurrently. What's happening right now is the weight of the wood is distributing its weight onto the seam as the seam gives its heat up into the clapper, and there's an exchange, right? This accepts that heat, but it's giving it its weight. So when I remove this, once this is cooled, that seam is way more likely to be flatter than wanting to close up. We all have seen that. Let's look at that, right? Now I put it on there a little bit wonky, looks like. That's okay. I can always heat that up again. I think my iron maybe is cooling down. It sure is. That's why that happened. I didn't have a very hot iron. You do want your iron on maximum heat. Later on, when we're working with our applique, we're going to bring that heat back to medium. So you get the idea. Full hot, clapper, go work on something else, come back, a much flatter seam. So I was a late adopter with clappers, and I now know how important they are, especially when we're working on prairie points for point of view and other projects, folded star hot pads that also have a lot of prairie points. So it just helps all those points kind of behave, right? Makes it a lot easier too for top quilting when everything is laying nice and flat instead of everything closing up and creating too much bulk and making it a little bit difficult to do top quilting. So you see how we put all of these together. Then what we're doing here, let me just show you what we've got going on, is we just laid out our spool blocks, placing them right side together. Again, pinning here, sewing a 1/4 inch. And now again, we're going to be pressing open, open, open. So in essence, after we do the top and bottom of the spool and the middle of the spool, everything else will be pressed open. So I want you to see that. Okay, pressed open, and let's look at this. This is after we've sewn the top row, the bottom row together, press those seams, and then join those rows and add our borders. Look how this whole center portion is really pressed open to get the flattest amount and even distribution of the bulk of the seam allowances. Of course, once we decided to go ahead and get to this stage to add our borders in, we added our side borders, pressing to the sides, just like we're showing here, and up and top and bottom. Of course, we're adding that and pressing away. So you can see really pretty straightforward. I would say it's very important to sew an accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance to have these points hit. So if you have any challenges with that, pick up some of the seam guide, because you really want that to hit that 1/4 inch. Now everything is the same size, everything fits beautifully, and these points will automatically happen for you. And look how pretty that is, it kind of little pinwheel coming together. So that's how we do the patchwork, very straightforward. I'm going to clean up just a bit and we'll move on to the applique. No mystery here, just like we've been doing, but maybe this is the first time you've seen our channel. I do want to show you the amazing process and what a great job our team does with the laser shapes, and how we use a light box in conjunction with a layout diagram and an Appli-Fuse mat to pre-assemble our apples, our stems, and our leaves, so we're moving them onto the background as completed units. So let me get cleaned up just a touch, and we'll come back and move on to the applique. So for the applique, first thing I'm going to do is bring that heat back to a medium heat. I have my Daylight light pad. This is the Wafer 1 light pad. I love, it used to be called the light box. They had Wafer 1, 2, and 3 light box. It used to be the Wafer 2 light box was over $200. Now that Wafer light pad 2, as of today's filming here, is under $100, which is incredible. So if you have been holding off getting a light source, this is the time. I don't know when those prices are going to increase, but you need a light source. You need a light source. We're going to use our applique diagram, and as I said, you don't have to trace that out. This is part of your kit. This is why people love to get applique kits from Shabby Fabrics, right? They don't necessarily love tracing and cutting that out, and it's never as precise. Quilters like precision, and they like to kind of skip ahead so they can just enjoy the laying out the shapes. So when you get your shapes, just a reminder, you have the white on the back. The easiest way to release this is have the paper side up, give a nice firm crease, and you see how that just released the paper. Don't baby that. Don't dig at it with your nails or dig at that with tweezers. Give it a hard crease so that it releases. So we've already done some of our apples and stems, and let's go ahead and show you how we use our applique diagram to pre-assemble that before moving that onto the background. Because back in the day, there was no applique diagram. There was just reverse refusible applique. I had a photo, and I was winging it, bringing one piece on, followed by the next piece, and many times they weren't numbered. Notice the numbers on the diagram. Piece 1 goes down first, followed by 2 and 3, and the dash line means that portion of the shape, this portion of the apple lies behind the leaf. Makes sense. That's just kind of a juxtaposition, helps you visualize that. So the sequence is light source, applique diagram, and we're going to use the Gypsy Quilter Appli-Fuse mat. This is the best applique pressing mat I have ever used. I've used the sheets, I've used different brands. This is the one. It comes in a variety of sizes. For our size, the smallest one is all we need. So I'm going to place this over the top, and as you can see, it starts to obstruct our view. Now we only have 3 pieces, so it's pretty straightforward, but maybe there were more pieces. Maybe there were 8 or 10. You can always simply take a picture with your camera, your phone, and be able to reference that, because it is very important that we're putting shapes down in the proper sequence. Have your wool pressing mat or your ironing board in your iron. This is the sequence if you're right-handed. If you are left-handed, it's probably the other direction, right? So here's how this will work, is we'll turn on our light source, help us see what we're doing, and we're going to press our shape into the Appli-Fuse mat because it has a grip. Look at that, right? I love that. It's like another pair of hands. Applique sheets are very slick. and things tend to kind of slide around. I have to be very careful. So I've always appreciated the grip that happens with the Appli-Fuse mat. Now I'm going to grab for my Gypsy Quilter tweezers because it's a little easier for me to control that and get this in the exact position every time. I also use these Gypsy Quilter tweezers when I'm removing some of the paper from the foundation paper piecing, kind of in those corners and nooks and crannies that I can't get. Now we'll take this, we have to always move it, and I simply place my iron on top. So all three of those layers right now are warming up. I leave the iron on for about 6-7 seconds. I move that out of the way. We could go work on another apple right now, right? I would just come over here. I could even use the same shape. They're really all the same. We've oriented them differently. And you could now put your next apple together and your next apple together and your next apple till all of them are on your mat. Once this is cooled down, and we're not there yet, I'm gonna let that cool down. I've made that mistake of grabbing that off there, and you can imagine if it's still warm, what happens if you try to take a cake out of the oven, out of the pan, and it hasn't cooled all the way? It's probably not going to stay together. Same is true here. You need to let that cool all the way down. But in the meantime, we have other things that we could do because we do see our scallops. Let's make sure our background's cut to the exact size. It is. You'll want to make sure you do cut your background to the correct size. The fabric in your kit is always going to be a little bit bigger, so you want to cut that down. But in the meantime, while our apples are cooling down, we could be attaching our scallops here, ironing those down. And I love the convenience of laser cut applique, right? I've done so much of the tracing. I used to go into Joann's when we had a Joann's and buy the entire bolt of heat and bond light. How many of you out there did the same thing, right? And it was fun, the first 12 shapes, and then it became a chore. And sometimes I just put the project away because it was so much of the tracing and the cutting, and I just wanted to get to this part right here, and often ran out of time. So don't let anybody shame you into thinking that laser cut's somehow cheating. Life is short and getting shorter by the day. Let's do the things we love and let today's technology help us get there, right? Just enjoy the parts of being a maker that we love the most. All right, once this is cooled down, watch the magic. Isn't that, I never get tired of demonstrating just how incredible the combination of a light source, an applique diagram is, and the Appli-Fuse mat. It's incredible. Now, once you're done with this, I want to encourage you to roll this back up so that it doesn't get dusty. It's out of the way. We use our Gypsy Quilter slap and wrap peels. This comes with about 12 of those. It helps me stay organized. This is rolled up. I know where it is. If you are a machine embroiderer, you do anything that has stabilizers because they just unroll. This is a great way to keep your sewing room organized and reduce the footprint and be able to store that in a drawer, right? And it's not flopping around. So that's just something I want to mention that we've discovered helps us stay organized. Okay, we place this on here. We know where that goes, and then we're simply going to be laying out all of our apples. You can refer to our image here if you would like to mimic what we've done, or just go for it. That's the beautiful part about it being your project. You can put apples wherever you want them to be. Maybe we'll put one there and here. Get that straight. And then you know the drill, right? Take it right back over to our wool pressing mat or your ironing board, wherever your ironing source is. I often transport it with the paper because it gives it some stability. Hold on to the edge and I slide this out. Now here comes the iron again, holding that down. Again, 6-7 seconds. Notice I let go. Too many years of ironing pilot shirts on my layovers, making sure my shirt was as clean and kind of well presented as possible where I was doing this. I've made that mistake too many times with applique. You just start to talk or forget, and you're doing this and things smear. So I just tend to let go, kind of count in my mind, 1 potato, 2 potato. We're in Idaho, so we count here in potatoes. We've always said that, kind of a joke, right? Idaho's known for its potatoes. Get everything pressed down. Now, you could, at this point, if you're inclined, this is when you can use the thread set to stitch down those. What we like to do, so that this looks completely embossed, you might even be able to see that. We'll try to get in and get in closer, is we actually attach the 2 blocks to our center applique, add our side borders, and our 2 ends. We add our Cali-Del fusible fleece to the back of the top, put our backing on the back. Now is when we go ahead and not only stitch down on our actual blocks here, but this is when we actually do that machine applique. It just gives everything an embossed look. If you're sewing on a machine where you're concerned that pivoting and that turning, your machine isn't going to do well with that, you can always stitch that down now. That's fine. But remember that later on, when you get everything put together with your fusible fleece or batting and your backing, you still want to do a little bit of quilting in here to get everything kind of holding together, especially if you ever think you're going to want to wash this. But that's how this project goes together. Kits are the way to go, and people are figuring that out, right? It's sometimes I actually hear it a lot when we were having retreats. I'm not good at putting colors together. This is why I buy a shabby kit. Or I have an anxiety about putting colors together, wondering what will this look like? That's the beautiful part about seeing something you love and going, just add to cart, right? There's no guessing. You get to just be the maker and have the joy of putting this together. So while you're at the website picking up this kit, pick up the others in the series as well. We're seeing more quilters do that because they love having something to display each month, right? It's hard to just really kind of come up with projects sometimes for months like August, September, even months like May. Well, what are we doing? Well, the So Cute Runner series solves that. So head to the Shabby website right now to pick up your kit. Be sure to pick up your thread set and any of the notions you might need.